Have you ever looked at someone's balcony overflowing with healthy herbs, colorful flowers, and baskets filled with ripe vegetables and wondered why your own container garden never seems to look the same? Maybe you carefully selected attractive pots, planted healthy seedlings, and gave them regular attention, yet your plants still developed yellow leaves, soggy soil, and disappointing growth. The truth is that container gardening is a little more challenging than many people expect. Although growing plants in pots appears simple, a few common mistakes can quietly prevent them from thriving. Unlike plants growing in the ground, those in containers live in a limited environment where even small problems can quickly affect the roots, leaves, and overall health of the plant. In this video, we'll explore 5 of the most common container gardening mistakes and show you exactly how to avoid them. If your herbs keep wilting, your vegetables fail to produce, or your flowers lose their beauty far too quickly, one of these hidden mistakes could be the reason. 1. Using the wrong soil, a hidden problem that starts underground. One of the biggest mistakes container gardeners make begins where they can't easily see it, below the surface around the roots. Long before leaves begin turning yellow or plants stop growing, problems often develop underground. By the time visible symptoms appear, the roots may already be under considerable stress. Many beginners believe that ordinary garden soil works just as well in containers as it does in flower beds or vegetable gardens. Since it performs perfectly outdoors, it seems reasonable to assume it will perform equally well inside a pot. Unfortunately, containers create a completely different growing environment. In the ground, soil naturally drains excess water, allows fresh air to circulate, and provides roots with unlimited room to spread. Inside a container, however, regular garden soil quickly becomes compacted. Instead of remaining loose and well aerated, it becomes heavy and dense, trapping moisture while reducing the amount of oxygen available to the roots. As oxygen disappears, the roots begin to weaken. Growth slows, older leaves gradually turn yellow, and the plant loses its healthy appearance. Fungus gnats may begin flying around the soil surface, unpleasant odors may develop inside the pot, and if the plant is removed, the roots are often dark, soft, or slimy instead of firm and white. This is exactly why experienced container gardeners rely on quality potting mixes rather than ordinary garden soil. Potting mixes are specially designed to stay light, airy, and free-draining, even after months inside a container. Ingredients like peat moss or cocoa coir help hold enough moisture without becoming waterlogged, while perlite, pumice, and vermiculite create tiny air spaces that allow oxygen to continue reaching the roots. Compost supplies nutrients and beneficial microorganisms that improve root health and help plants absorb nutrients more efficiently. You can think of the soil inside a container as a small ecosystem where water, oxygen, nutrients, and microbial life must remain in perfect balance. Once that structure breaks down, the entire growing environment begins to suffer. A simple homemade potting mix often works extremely well by combining 1 part compost for nutrients and beneficial microbes, 1 part cocoa coir or peat moss to retain moisture, and 1 part perlite or pumice to improve drainage and airflow. The proportions can easily be adjusted depending on what you're growing. Succulents and cacti generally require extra drainage, while vegetables such as tomatoes usually benefit from a mix that holds slightly more moisture. Another mistake many gardeners overlook is continuing to use old potting mix year after year. As organic materials decompose, the soil becomes denser, drains more slowly, and loses much of its original structure. Older mixes may also contain pests, fungal diseases, decaying roots, or harmful organisms left behind from previous crops. Replacing the potting mix or refreshing it with compost each season often leads to noticeably healthier plants. Healthy soil provides much more than simple support for roots. It regulates moisture, supplies nutrients, encourages beneficial microbial activity, and creates ideal growing conditions. When the soil is healthy, the results become obvious through stronger roots, greener foliage, richer color, and much more vigorous growth. In container gardening, choosing the right growing medium is one of the most important decisions you can make because healthy soil truly forms the foundation of every successful container garden. 2. Overwatering. Too much care can become the biggest problem. Among all the mistakes container gardeners make, overwatering is probably the most common. Ironically, it usually happens because gardeners are trying to take excellent care of their plants rather than neglect them. As soon as the weather becomes warmer or the leaves begin to droop slightly, many people instinctively reach for the watering can. Although the intention is good, adding too much water often causes far greater damage than allowing the soil to become slightly dry. Inside a container, excess water has only one escape route: the drainage holes. If the soil remains constantly saturated, the tiny air spaces around the roots fill with water instead of oxygen. Without oxygen, roots are unable to function properly. Gradually, they begin to rot, harmful fungi multiply, and the plant slowly declines from below the surface upward. One of the reasons overwatering is so difficult to recognize is that its symptoms closely resemble those of underwatering. Leaves wilt, stems droop, and growth slows dramatically. Assuming the plant is thirsty, many gardeners water even more, making the situation even worse. As root damage increases, leaves begin turning yellow, stems soften, and eventually the entire plant may collapse. A container that appeared perfectly healthy only days earlier can suddenly contain a plant that is struggling to survive. The secret to successful watering isn't simply how often you water, but how you water. Experienced gardeners usually water thoroughly until moisture drains freely through the bottom of the pot, completely soaking the root system. They then allow the upper layer of soil to dry slightly before watering again. For most plants, checking the top inch of soil with a finger remains one of the easiest and most reliable ways to decide when additional water is actually needed. Proper drainage is equally important. Containers without drainage holes almost always create problems because trapped water has nowhere to go. Simply using pots with adequate drainage holes is one of the easiest ways to prevent root rot and improve overall plant health. Another mistake is watering according to the calendar, rather than paying attention to the plant and its environment. Temperature, humidity, sunlight, wind, and plant size all influence how quickly a container dries out. During extremely hot summer weather, some pots may need watering every day, while during cool or cloudy periods they may stay moist for several days. Dry indoor air can also cause confusion. In heated homes or low humidity climates, plants sometimes wilt because the surrounding air is too dry rather than because the soil lacks moisture. In those situations, increasing humidity may solve the problem more effectively than adding additional water. Some gardeners place a few small stones over drainage holes to reduce soil loss, but good quality potting mix and proper drainage remain the most important factors. It's also important to empty excess water from trays or saucers placed beneath containers. Standing water encourages mosquitoes, fungus gnats, root diseases, and constantly wet conditions that weaken plants over time. Healthy watering always follows the same natural rhythm. Thoroughly soak the soil, then allow fresh air to return to the root zone before watering again. Once you learn to balance moisture and oxygen correctly, plants usually respond with stronger growth, healthier foliage, and much better overall performance. The simplest way to remember this is that healthy roots need oxygen every bit as much as they need water. 3. Choosing the wrong container. Why the pot matters more than you might expect. One of the biggest container gardening mistakes happens before you even plant a seed: choosing a pot that isn't suitable for the plant you want to grow. Many gardeners are drawn to decorative containers because they look beautiful on patios, balconies, or social media, but appearance alone doesn't create healthy growing conditions. Small decorative pots, shallow bowls, and fashionable miniature planters often fail to provide the space plants need to develop strong root systems. Every healthy plant depends on what happens beneath the soil. As roots grow, they naturally spread outward, searching for water, nutrients, and support. When confined inside a container that is too small, they quickly run out of room and begin circling around the inside of the pot instead of growing naturally. This condition, commonly known as becoming root-bound, restricts the plant's ability to absorb everything it needs to stay healthy. Before long, the effects become visible above the soil. Growth slows, leaves begin turning yellow, and the plant may wilt even though it receives regular watering. Small containers create additional problems because they contain less soil, meaning moisture disappears more quickly and nutrients become depleted much faster. This places plants under constant stress throughout the growing season. Selecting the proper container size can make an enormous difference. Herbs and leafy vegetables like basil, parsley, spinach, and lettuce usually perform well in pots at least 6 to 8 inches deep. Larger crops such as tomatoes, peppers, and eggplants generally require containers 12 to 18 inches deep to allow healthy root development. Compact fruit trees, blueberries, and citrus plants usually need containers at least 20 inches deep, so their roots have enough room to support long-term growth. In most situations, larger containers provide clear advantages. They hold moisture longer, keep soil temperatures more stable, and allow roots to expand without restriction. Small pots heat up quickly under direct sunlight and dry out rapidly, forcing plants to endure repeated periods of stress. The material the container is made from is just as important as its size. Terracotta and clay pots remain popular because their porous walls allow both air and moisture to move naturally through the container. This makes them excellent for herbs and drought-tolerant plants, although they lose water much faster during hot weather. Plastic containers are lightweight and retain moisture for much longer, making them especially useful in warm climates or for gardeners who can't water every day. However, dark-colored plastic can absorb a great deal of heat, raising soil temperatures enough to stress delicate roots. Fabric grow bags have become increasingly popular because they encourage healthier root systems through a process known as air pruning. Instead of circling endlessly around the pot, roots stop growing when they reach the breathable fabric, stimulating the development of many new feeder roots. The only disadvantage is that fabric containers dry out faster and usually require more frequent watering. Wooden planters combine attractive appearance with excellent moisture retention. Durable woods like cedar can last for many years outdoors while providing a stable growing environment. Regardless of the material, one feature is absolutely essential: drainage. Without drainage holes, excess water collects around the roots, creating perfect conditions for root rot and fungal diseases. Even the most attractive planter becomes harmful if water has no way to escape. Gardeners who prefer decorative pots without drainage holes often place a standard nursery container inside the outer planter. This allows excess water to drain properly while preserving the decorative appearance. A container is much more than something that simply holds soil. It controls moisture, airflow, root development, and temperature, shaping nearly every aspect of the plant's environment. Choosing a container that suits the plant's needs makes gardening easier and encourages healthier, stronger growth. In most cases, selecting a generously sized container with excellent drainage and suitable materials provides the strongest possible foundation for a successful container garden. 4. Ignoring sunlight needs, one of the biggest reasons container plants underperform. Sunlight is one of the most important factors for healthy plant growth, yet it is also one of the most misunderstood aspects of container gardening. Many people place all of their pots together on a balcony, patio, porch, or windowsill without realizing that different plants require very different amounts of sunlight. As a result, some plants flourish, while others become weak, scorched, or disappointingly unproductive despite receiving exactly the same care. Every plant has unique lighting requirements. Some vegetables and herbs need long hours of bright, direct sun, while others perform far better when protected from the hottest part of the afternoon. Understanding these differences can completely transform a container garden. Fruiting crops such as tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, strawberries, and eggplants usually require 6 to 8 hours of direct sunlight every day. Bright sunlight provides the energy these plants need to produce flowers and develop abundant fruit. Without enough light, stems become weak, flowering decreases, and harvests remain disappointing. On the other hand, leafy vegetables and many delicate herbs generally appreciate cooler growing conditions. Crops such as lettuce, spinach, parsley, kale, and arugula often perform best when they receive gentle morning sun followed by afternoon shade. Intense summer heat may cause them to bolt, shifting their energy toward flowering instead of producing tender leaves. Once this happens, the leaves often become bitter and less enjoyable to harvest. The direction your growing area faces also plays an important role. South-facing locations typically receive the strongest and longest periods of sunlight, making them ideal for vegetables that produce fruit. East-facing areas provide softer morning sunshine and are often perfect for herbs and leafy crops. North-facing spaces receive far less direct sunlight and generally suit shade-loving plants such as mint or decorative foliage species. Plants usually reveal whether they are happy with their lighting conditions. Long, stretched stems often indicate that a plant is searching for more light, while scorched, pale, or curled leaves may suggest excessive sun exposure. Compact growth, sturdy stems, and rich green foliage usually indicate that light levels are appropriate. Gardeners who lack sufficient natural light can still grow productive container gardens using modern LED grow lights. High-quality grow lights provide much of the same light spectrum available outdoors and allow vegetables and herbs to thrive inside homes or shaded spaces. Many systems include automatic timers that maintain a consistent daily lighting schedule with very little effort. Another important point to remember is that sunlight changes throughout the year. Areas that receive excellent spring sunshine may become partially shaded during summer, as nearby trees develop leaves or the angle of the sun changes. Experienced gardeners often move containers from one location to another during the growing season to maintain ideal lighting conditions. Reflective surfaces can also increase available light. White walls, mirrors, or reflective materials help bounce additional sunlight toward plants, making small gardens and indoor growing spaces significantly brighter. Ultimately, sunlight provides the energy that powers photosynthesis. Water, fertilizer, and healthy soil can only support plant growth if enough light is available. Without adequate sunlight, even the healthiest plants will struggle to reach their full potential. Matching each plant to its preferred lighting conditions often leads to dramatic improvements, including stronger growth, healthier foliage, and far more productive harvests. Learning to understand sunlight is one of the most valuable skills any successful container gardener can develop. 5. Forgetting to fertilize. The hidden reason container plants lose their strength. One of the most common reasons container gardens gradually decline is a shortage of nutrients. Many gardeners carefully manage watering, choose good containers, and provide plenty of sunlight, yet overlook one essential fact: plants growing in pots depend entirely on the nutrients supplied by the gardener. Without regular feeding, even the healthiest plants eventually begin to weaken. In traditional garden beds, roots can spread through large areas of soil searching for nutrients. Earthworms, microorganisms, decomposing organic matter, and countless natural processes constantly replenish those nutrients. Container plants don't have that advantage. They grow inside a closed environment, and once the nutrients in the potting mix are used up, the roots have nowhere else to find nourishment. This usually happens gradually. Fresh potting mix often contains enough nutrients to support vigorous early growth, allowing plants to produce lush foliage and develop quickly during the first weeks. As time passes, however, nutrients are steadily washed away every time the container is watered. Eventually, the remaining nutrient supply becomes too low to support continued healthy growth. The first warning signs are often easy to overlook. Leaves lose their rich green color, growth slows noticeably, flowering decreases, and vegetables or fruit become smaller and less abundant. Many gardeners assume they need more water or additional sunlight, when the real issue is simply a lack of nutrients. The best fertilization program begins before planting. Mixing compost or a slow-release fertilizer into the potting mix creates a reserve of nutrients that supports early growth. Slow-release fertilizers gradually provide nutrition over many weeks, reducing the likelihood of sudden deficiencies. As plants mature, especially heavy feeders like tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, and strawberries, their nutritional needs increase significantly. Most container plants benefit from additional feeding every few weeks throughout the growing season. Balanced fertilizers containing nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium support every stage of plant development. Nitrogen encourages leafy growth, phosphorus strengthens roots and supports flowering, while potassium improves plant vigor, fruit quality, and resistance to stress. Once flowering and fruit production begin, many gardeners switch to fertilizers containing higher levels of phosphorus and potassium to encourage better harvest rather than excessive leaf growth. Organic fertilizers remain especially popular for container gardens. Worm castings gently feed plants while improving soil biology. Compost tea introduces beneficial microorganisms and trace minerals. Banana peel tea supplies natural potassium, while fish emulsion and seaweed extracts provide a broad range of nutrients that encourage healthy growth. Plants often reveal nutrient deficiencies through their appearance. Yellow leaves may suggest insufficient nitrogen. Poor flowering and weak fruit production often point to phosphorus deficiency. Weak stems and dull foliage can indicate a shortage of potassium. On the other hand, applying too much fertilizer may burn roots and damage leaves. The most successful fertilization programs rely on consistency. Small, regular feedings generally produce far healthier plants than occasional heavy applications. Excess fertilizer can lead to salt accumulation inside the soil, eventually harming delicate roots. Fertilizer functions much like fuel for a growing plant. Every new leaf, flower, fruit, and root requires nutrients. Without replacing what has been used, growth naturally slows regardless of how much sunlight or water the plant receives. Container gardening is a carefully controlled environment where every essential resource must be provided by the gardener. Water keeps plants alive, but proper nutrition allows them to truly flourish. When container plants receive consistent feeding throughout the season, the improvement is often remarkable. Leaves become greener, stems grow stronger, flowering becomes more abundant, and harvests become larger than ever. In successful container gardening, fertilization isn't simply helpful. It is one of the most important ingredients for long-term success.